Me, Nebraska, it's been a while for them. But there's a lot of you who are in this chat room that are fans of either Oklahoma, Texas. There's even Georgia. I don't know if we still get the Ohio State fan, the Buckeye fan. Is this the way you want college football to be? And I would think, and I said this earlier today, if you're one of those schools or fans of one of those schools, why would you want it to change? Why? Maybe one day one of the dogs has something happen where they get raided or whatever. But is this, and that doesn't mean things will change, is this the way you want college football to be today?
I think that the chaos is what is annoying about it, and that it's just, there's just no structure to it. And that's what I want, is just, there's a middle ground here where everybody wins. We're really bad at that as a people of
everyone wins a ribbon?
No, it's not everyone wins a ribbon.
Trophy? Okay.
Clearly
everyone,
not in this case.
Yeah, no, you're right.
Everyone wants their way. And it's not about the we, it's about the me. And what about my school? What about this? What about that? This and that. Like, what's good for the many? And that needs to be the focus, and that's not the focus on things. And I think that's the problem we have, because I don't see that attitude changing, because it's all based on the individuals and not the what's best for the whole of the sport.
Yeah, I mean, it's a conversation we really have like probably every single day, because nothing's changing, guys. I mean, it's not going to go back to where it was.
I understand that.
But what I'm saying
that, yeah.
is like, you got to ask me as the guy who has a lot of respect and feelings and joy for a lot of those other fan bases out there that aren't one of those schools that you mentioned. And so from that standpoint, yeah, I don't want it to change. I don't want the Big 12 or the ACC or whatever to fade away. I think having multiple conferences, multiple rivalries, multiple parts of the country that are all involved, I think all of that is good. Now, as an Oklahoma fan, am I excited about the fact that they're going to go from playing Iowa State and Baylor and TCU and West Virginia to now playing Alabama and Georgia? Yeah, I absolutely am. Would that make me want to pay more, or would that make me, if I lived in Norman, Oklahoma, more likely to get season tickets? Yep, it probably would. Is that going to be bigger TV ratings? Sure will be. Is that going to make more money? Absolutely. And that's all Oklahoma and Joe Castiglione have to worry about. They don't have to worry about Baylor and Iowa State, and I'm sorry, but that's just true, though. Mm-hmm. It's not LSU's job to worry about what happens to Tulane. It's not Florida State or Florida or Miami's job to worry about UCF, right? And so that's just reality. And there is it's not even an argument. It absolutely is fair to say that a school like Texas or like Oklahoma has helped float a lot of these other schools for many years. And that's absolutely true. But at the same time, that doesn't mean that I want them to go away. It doesn't mean I want them to play like a semi-pro level of ball that's like nothing like what Oklahoma or Texas are playing, which is full-on pro ball in whatever kind of arrangement. So, yeah, it's from a fan standpoint, I'm fired up. I think Oklahoma fans see that schedule drop, and they're like, hell, yeah, I'm going to this place and that place, and this team's coming here. And you saw, the Texas release, and Chris Del Conte made the comment about how, in the long run, they got Florida and Georgia coming to town. I mean, that's massive versus what their typical regular schedule would be. So it was something that was going to eventually happen, because the separation just kept becoming too much. But when you got money so involved that every penny matters and everybody's scrounging for it, of course the ones who make the most of it are going to be like, so why are we sharing it with you guys? Like, why are we not going to go get more of what we've helped earn? And so that's not an answer to your question. I see it from everyone's standpoint. I don't think it's good.
Let me stop you on that, though.
Yeah.
The NFL is the most powerful league in the, not world, because the soccer has some leagues that are monstrous. If the Cowboys, with their value, or other franchises with their value, are willing to share the revenue with Buffalo, Cincinnati, or whoever else, if they understand the value of sharing the revenue, why wouldn't college football?
Well, there's more people. I mean, it's just it's a volume issue that college football has, in that there's a.
Are they sharing with the Dallas Desperados of the Arena Football League? Yeah. Are they worried about the Fort Worth whatever?
Okay. If there were 52 NFL franchises, I think they'd keep the same.
But
model.
there's not.
I know.
But I do think, though, that there's
hold on. I agree with you that there's a lot of schools that have been carrying the water and the buckets, a lot more of it, for years and years and years, and they finally went, why are we doing this?
Yeah, and look, maybe that needs to be the discussion of, okay, the water carriers go off, and let's stop pretending, and let's just say what we want to say, and then we figure out, like, we have to talk about what things are in reality as opposed to what we want them to be. And that allows us to have a middle ground of, okay, these are the places that make this much money. These are the places that make this much money. Athletes are entitled, depending on where they are, to this. And just have a discussion about changing this thing from the top down that works for everybody, and everybody can settle into the spot where they fit best and can be best for those programs. I think that's the better thing. But like right now, it's just so chaotic. It feels like it's never going to get wrangled in.
Yeah, and I know I just cut straight to the point there, and you're like, well, hear me out. But the thing is I get what you're trying to say, but that's not the reality. So it doesn't really matter if it was like that, because it's not like that, and it's not ever going to be like that. And so that's why I just dismiss it. I understand it's more of a thought exercise. Well, what if? But that what if is not realistic in any way, and it's not going to happen. So that's why I just immediately bypass that, not because I don't want to think about it. It's just, it feels like a waste of time.
But in the SEC, okay, again, not the same amount of teams, but in the SEC, they are fine, at least they have been. Now, that may change in the next 5 years, with Vanderbilt getting the same amount of money as Alabama or Georgia.
Because Vanderbilt doesn't give them nothing. They give them academic credibility. They give them an old down south institution that's been a part of the fabric for decades and decades. They have their role. And guess what? Somebody's
But
going to
Oregon
have to...
State and Washington State and Iowa State and Kansas State have been a part of the fabric for years.
Okay, well, where does it stop, though?
I know. I'm just, you know.
I get what you're saying, but it's just, I'm sorry, there's not enough room on the boat. Like, are we going to drown because we're trying to save? Greg Sankey's not worried about Iowa State. He's not worried about Oregon State. They're worried about the SEC or the Big Ten, or the TV executives are worried about what's going to make them the most money and get them the most ratings. And it sounds harsh, I guess, but it's just the way that it's going is the way that they're going to be able to accomplish those things. And I don't think that they care. And quite frankly, if we're talking big business, this has been the case for decades in this country.
Yeah,
so
I get it. I get that.
It's just the way that it is.
Well, I think a good question would be: are Kansas State fans? And I'm not picking on you like you're the low life or the lower part. I'm not. Baylor fans, Minnesota fans, whoever, are they going to be as tuned in to the highest level of college football if it was to separate into 32 teams?
I mean, I think that's a great concern. You think so? Okay.
I do. I think because I think you look at it from gambling.
Yeah.
There's so many different
That's a big part of
avenues
it.
where people are always going to have an eyeball on it. And I think anytime you have a matchup where you're drawing Michigan versus somebody else, like that's naturally going to get your eyes. People are still going to watch.
I'm going to watch a big football game. I may not watch, for example, just an example, Tulane against Washington State, even if it was Cam Ward or not.
Right.
But I will watch if Michigan's going to play Georgia.
There you go.
I mean, even in October, like
that's
I
all
love,
there is.
Like my favorite time of the year is either late in the year when you have the rivalries, which are some of them are disappearing, or early in the year when you have really, really high intensity, like Texas, Alabama was in September.
So I think of it this way: And I don't feel like hopefully every day we have to have like the existential crisis of college football conversation, because it is just what it is, and we need to adapt like everybody else has to adapt with it. And yeah, things are changing, and some people are going to probably not get the way that they want in the end sooner or later, or however else that comes about. But when Bill Hancock was talking to us about a couple of years ago, the fact that they weren't worried about people tuning out if it became, more exclusive or things of that nature. I think you look at any Michigan game this year or whatever, but you look especially at the ones where they're playing another name brand school, and if you're ESPN or you're Fox or whoever, okay, we might lose 20,000 viewers because Iowa State fans became disinterested because they're not a part of the club anymore, right? But if you're still raking in 10.5 million because Iowa State doesn't play, but you're putting on Ohio State, Michigan, and the next week's Ohio State and Florida, and the next week's Ohio State and A&M, and the next, are you really going to miss those viewers that you like? It's not going to be significant enough, is what I'm trying to say, unless every fan of every school that's not involved in whatever you think this is going to be were to somehow all bandy together by the masses, all of them, and say we millions of people all combined are not going to watch. That's how you would feel it, but that's not going to happen.
Well, look,
because people are going to bet, they're going to still want to watch football, and they're going to be drawn to big name brands. And so what you might lose, I think, is like, it's not a fatal blow. It's a nick, it's a cut. You might bleed a little bit, but you're not going to like suddenly go from 5 million viewers to like 2 million viewers,
right.
because you didn't include 9 of the 10 Big 12 teams.
Well, and look, I'll just give you a real world example of people saying, well, we're not going to watch this anymore, and the entity not being phased at all was Colin Kaepernick. There was a bunch of people who said, well, I'm not going to watch the NFL if they're going to kneel. Okay. And the NFL was like, all right, well, so,
they've lost viewers, but they haven't lost anything that affects the bottom line.
Yeah, I mean, did it like...
They still have more people watching now than ever before.
Yeah, again, the train kept going on the tracks, and some people got off, and looked at, the market does what the market does, but that wasn't the thing that undid the NFL.
And guarantee you some of them came back.
Yeah, and so like...
Guarantee that.
Here's another
part
example.
of it is
It's the same people that said, I'll never love the Cowboys or watch them again.
Yeah.
You fired Tom Landry.
They were watching
4
yesterday.
years later, my God, they're playing for a Super Bowl, and you couldn't buy enough jerseys.
No, I often will run up against a Cowboys fan like, yeah, I've still never forgiven Jerry for firing Tom Landry, and I'm like, I get it, but like, did you really not enjoy the '90s? Or they were awesome, and I know sometimes you say that because you're a person who's like, I'm going to boycott this, and then you can't walk it back, so you just
I wouldn't
watch it in
publicly
secret.
say it, but I don't watch some things like I used to.
And
No, but if you're a person who around your friends is like, I'm never watching those sons of bitches again.
No.
And then
I've said that about Nebraska.
Then you start watching them. You can't walk it back
If
because
you're a
you
fan,
made such
you don't walk
yeah.
away because of a coach getting fired.
Here's the thing about this whole breakaway thing or whatever is that people present it in different ways. Like there's one element of it where it's like it would basically be the minor league or whatever, which I don't know about all of that, but it could be viewed that way, I suppose, if it was all of the top brands and whatever. But it's not as though all these other programs then shutter and stop playing football. And it doesn't mean that they have no spot in the playoff. It's just a matter of do you eventually get drowned out because those who are in power keep making the rules to benefit themselves to where all of a sudden, there's no auto bids and now 8 of the 12 all come.
And they block you out.
And that's legitimate, and that's a legitimate concern. And the blocking out, I think, is real. But I don't know how it's healthy for even those schools, no matter how much money they're making. I don't know how it's healthy overall. If you distance yourself, that's one kind of conversation. But the idea of it would just be them and everything else just shutters basically and falls to where no one cares about it, I don't think that would be the case either. I think there might be some element of fans who would love more of a pure college football league, even if it didn't include the Blue Bloods and even if it didn't bring in 2 million viewers every week, but something that's just a little bit more college football.
All right,
the way
you think
they know
South
it.
Dakota State
What
didn't
changes?
celebrate their championship?
Yeah.
Sure they did. Or North Dakota State, all 30 of them? Or Mount Union?
I think it's the feeling that you're not a part of the club.
No,
Whereas
no,
with
it is.
South Dakota State, they're in their own club already. They don't care about the other club.
They understand where they are.
their
Not that
club's
they don't want to
good.
go play Michigan in a non-conference game.
It's just a tough pill to swallow if you're a Baylor fan or you're, West Virginia fan or something, and all of a sudden you're going to the not so exclusive club that you felt like you belonged to for a long time. That's a tough pill to swallow, but I do think there is still a way that it would be entertaining and to be good. But again, we're kind of putting all this way ahead of it because it's not to where it's getting to that point just
I
yet.
don't think the number will ever be as low as 32 that you hear about
Right.
or the two conferences. I still think it'll be pretty close to whatever the number is of what are considered Power 5 type schools with a Notre Dame or one or other still involved. Now,